What's up, people? Good afternoon. I hope everybody's doing fantastic on this Saturday, or whatever day you decide to watch this, or end up seeing it. I would like to talk about this Wuhan coronavirus, or this Chinese virus now. And I'd like to start off by saying, most of the time when something happens in the news, even if I'm interested in it, I don't discuss it. My channel isn't based around current events, but I feel like the reason I don't talk about these things is because I feel like it implies that I'm just posting clickbait or saying, ooh, look what's popular, look what's hot. And that's something I've always tried to avoid. Even when something's going on, I try to post as much positivity as I can. But I'm a realist, I'm a human being. When something comes around like this, like the coronavirus that is now affecting China, I can't. It's one of the subjects that I'm most interested in. Um, Unless you followed my channel for like the last 8 years, you probably don't know or remember some of the earliest videos that I made. I talked a lot about the potential for apocalypse. In fact, some of my earliest videos were about prepping, being prepared, having dried food, and basically mental preparation and being aware. I've got survival books and I think like 230 different like digital books on various hard drives and thumb drives, as well as physical copies of books. Like I've been the prepper type. I just like to be prepared because anything can happen tomorrow. So when a virus comes out, it's always one of the things that I'm looking out for. This particular virus doesn't seem to be any more dangerous than some of the other ones that have come around, like SARS. And if you remember SARS, and a lot of you do, but if you're younger, you were too young to really even remember. And it's crazy to me that it was that long ago. It was 2003, so it was like 17 years ago. So if you're in your 20s, you probably don't even remember much about it. It wasn't that big of a deal. But one of the big things, it was downplayed by China because, and this was almost 20 years ago, mind you. China has come a long way since then. They have the Belt Road Initiative going on right now. Everything is interconnected. There's a lot more people moving around through China now. So in Wuhan, there was a market. The animals somehow transferred or transmitted this coronavirus to humans. It's something that happens regularly in the world, except for it tends to happen in areas where a lot of animals are congregated around people. And usually it's only spread from animals to humans. There have been swine flu and bird flu. Once it starts to spread from human to human, that's when it becomes a problem. So, this particular virus, a few days ago, had killed, I don't know, 7 people, and a few hundred were infected. And checked recently, it was 1,000 infected, and I think 41 dead last time I checked. So I thought, is this really a problem? We have some great measures of control to protect against these, like the CDC. This is one of the times that they're supposed to shine. But studies that have been done have shown that all countries are incompetent and impotent when it comes to actually protecting fully against these things. You can't be fully aware. And one of the scariest things about this one, and this is what I've read, is that some of the people who have been affected and infected don't show any signs of fever. And fever is generally what you look for when you're trying to identify if people are sick. Right now they have quarantines. It's serious shit. They have, last time I checked, it was 8 cities, but it's expanded to 13 cities in China now. The whole Wuhan province. And if I looked right, it was 32 to 40 million people. They said that there were as many people quarantined in China as the whole population of Canada, if that gives a perspective. And the big question on a lot of people's minds is it worse than stated? Because we know that China tends to hide all of their, they want to downplay and minimize any damage. Because this is a huge issue when it comes to the economy. Today's Chinese New Year, okay? Last night was Chinese New Year's Eve. And today, the 25th, I don't know if it's the start, it's the Lunar New Year that they celebrate. This is the time when Chinese people go out and celebrate, spend a lot of money, and they're all shut down. People are completely locked away. I mean, it's when we're out in the West, we can just go, oh, well, it's a Chinese problem. But the world has become smaller. Now, here's the part that kind of blew my mind. I was reading an article It said that in the Wuhan province, they don't have enough hospital beds, of course. They're overflowing into the streets. People are freaking out, trying to get hospital beds. So what they did was they're building a hospital in 6 days that will house 1,000 people. And not just some ramshackle place. The picture shows, like, dozens of backhoes and tractors and bulldozers completely clearing this area. I mean, these tractors are only like, 40 feet apart. They're all working in unison. They're probably going to, China has a way of building things fast. That's for another time. It's insane how far they've come. But the fact that they're building a hospital in 6 days, or trying to, 6 to 7 days, is pretty amazing when you consider it. That shows that there's definitely a huge impact that's going on. Now, the average person's probably not going to be affected, even if it makes it to the States, which it has. There have been a case in Chicago and a case in Seattle. I live in Washington State, so the fact that there's a case in Seattle, that makes it a little kind of close to home, but I'm not worried about it yet, and I'm not going to stress about it. Only the people with compromised immune systems, whether young or old, are generally affected the most by these things. But if you look back in time, there's more travel, more roads, a 14-day incubation period perhaps, where people don't even realize they're sick until they just, like one guy just had diarrhea. He didn't even have a fever or feel sick, and he ended up having it. How many people could you have spread it to before you even realize what's going on? And as the world gets smaller, we can look back to a little over 100 years ago, to the 1918 flu pandemic. There are disputing viewpoints on exactly why it was so bad. Some people say that it was a particularly virulent strain of flu, but others say, well, there was poor sanitation and hand washing, and then the wars going on, it compromised things. Regardless, it was a major event. It killed, well, let's put it this way, 500 million people were affected by it. And this is at a time when the population was much smaller. Statistically, they said somewhere between 50 and 100 million people died in the 1918 pandemic. And this is before we had international flights. So 50 to 100 million people died. It was downplayed by the media because they didn't want people, fearing what was going on. 3 to 5% of the population. So that means that a minimum of 3% of the Earth's population was killed. And of course you can go back to the, various other issues in history like the Black Plague. But just talking about recent history as far as viruses, this flu virus killed 3 to 5% of the whole world's population. 1 in 20 people. That's pretty wild when you think about it. And so the biggest issues with this, beyond just health, because the healthy people can lock themselves away, but the one aspect is how it impacts the economy hugely, and people panic, and then people go and buy out masks. So what can we do? I can't sit here and talk about it. You can watch a million newscasts. By the time this video is uploaded, I'm sure it will have changed. The cases will have gone up. I'm not extremely worried about it. It's just something that I have to be aware of. So what can we do? Well, make sure our immune systems are operating strong. Well, that doesn't mean you can go out and buy some. This is the time when a lot of people are going to try to sell shitty products. I hate to say it, but buy this immune support, and this will help keep you from getting sick. As well as masks, which always sell out in stores. I've still got my mask from during the SARS thing. I think that I got from someone, or maybe it was the bird or swine flu thing, but somebody I knew bought a bunch, and he gave me these really nice masks. The masks, you need at least an N95 particulate mask, but even then, you have to shave your beard, and it has to be tightly fit on your face. They're not 100% guaranteed. I mean, people in China wear masks all the time. A lot of folks, it's pretty common. I mean, it's an interesting, social atmosphere to see everyone wearing face masks, just on even a normal day, but perhaps, they're ahead of the curve on that. During the 1 year after the 1918 flu pandemic, the life expectancy worldwide dropped by 12%. So it had a huge impact. Besides washing your hands, which is the obvious one, keep them away from your face. It's a very simple thing. Most of the, disease communication people, it's like, hey, it's pretty obvious, you know. Even if you cough into your sleeve, then you can get it in your sleeve and then on your face. Just use tissues and be smart if it becomes an issue. It's hard for people. You don't want to not go to work. You don't want to pull your kids out of school. And right now, there's none of that's necessary. But perhaps in 2 weeks that might change. I don't know. But it is something to be aware of. Not just this virus, but anything that could come around the corner. I mean, I have no doubt that the Earth, you know, the fact that so many humans live in close quarters, if you look historically at like animal populations that are overcrowded, somehow an infection or a virus or something comes up in the natural environment which eliminates the overburden of animals, such as the acacia bush, which produces a toxin when it's eaten too much. So it kills off all these animals because they were too much on one range. There's a bunch of history behind that. I could share that sometime. But to get to the point, wash your hands, be smart, you know, avoid overly populated places if this outbreak happens. And as far as what we can take for it, you know, this is the kind of time when people sell like those airborne pills, if you remember that from the 90s. These little pills that you take and dissolve them, and they're supposed to be for people who fly to help keep them from getting sick. It's complete bullshit. It was shown to be a total scam. And most products that are sold on the market as being immune boosters are generally unsupported. Doesn't mean they don't work. It just means that there's not a lot of evidence to show. Some of them do, however, and one of the ones I wanted to share here was this two mushrooms that I take. One is chaga, and this is wild chaga, and I look for stuff that is at least, this stuff is standardized to a minimum of 10% beta-glucans and 1% triterpene, and this is an alcohol extract from wild chaga. I also take lion's mane, but I don't take it regularly, just once in a while, but that's completely different. It might have immune benefits, but mostly it's taken for synaptic and brain, and you know, for improving memory and cognition. It's considered a nootropic, but this is red reishi mushroom extract. Now, this stuff is expensive as hell. I was selling it on my website for a while, and it's still on there, but I just don't really promote it because it's just, mushroom extracts are so expensive. And I'm still on the fence about how effective they are, but this is a 12-to-1 extract of real reishi mushrooms with no mycelia, which, by the way, doesn't mean that it's not good. It's just, I should say, it doesn't mean that mycelia is not good. I've heard that mycelia is actually better for a lot of things. This is 10% beta-glucans, 2% triterpenes, super sticky, the one thing you'll find about mushrooms. So I took these mushrooms, combined them with a few other things, and I made this blend. It's called What the Flu. And no, this is not an endorsement for a product. I did sell these last year, or a few years ago for a while, but I do not sell them. This is a package I made about a year ago out of the rest of the material I had. What the Flu was like I looked up all these different herbs that could help, and it was actually during, I think, the last potential outbreak of some really bad flu season is what it was. And I thought, well, I want to make something that might help, but I still don't know. And so I couldn't even market it as immunity support. And what I'm saying is a lot of people are selling bullshit as immunity support. So don't rely on anything. But I think that mushrooms may be some of the best things that you can use because they have such a long history of use. And if you want to go by, you know, I know it's just folk medicine for a lot of people, but the Chinese have used reishi. It's considered, you know, the king of mushrooms. And the fact that these mushrooms have to protect themselves in nature, like Paul Stamets talks a lot about this, you know, they have to produce their own antibiotics and, you know, to protect themselves against natural diseases, predators, whatever it might be. And so they have to have a strong immune system. And a lot of people don't realize that mushrooms are very similar to humans. In their DNA composition is actually closer to humans than to plants because mushrooms aren't plants. And now I'm getting off track, but this is an important thing, I guess, because people are wondering, what can I take? And they'll spend thousands of dollars on these masks and all these vitamins. Just get some good mushroom extracts, see if it works. Try to find somebody who maybe, mostly it's just avoiding populated places if there's an outbreak and washing your hands. So I don't want to go on and on about this. I just really wanted to cover this topic because within a couple of months, if this was as bad as it could be, it might cause worldwide chaos. The World Health Organization has not declared a global emergency, but they are on the verge of it. And you have to remember one thing. They don't want to cause panic, even if it is a danger. Because causing a panic means losing business, losing money. People in the economic world, big businesses, they're like, do not shut down my airport. Do not shut down my travels, my business, my trucking empire. People need to get food too. We have to transport items. We have to keep moving because we depend on this society so much that we can't just go back to eating our local food. And there was one time when you could just rely on your local food. But it's a different world now. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think. Talk to y'all later. Peace out.